Hello and welcome to Business Morning. I am Bisi Adebayo. Oil prices are lower today after U.S. President Donald Trump dashed hopes for a fourth stimulus package to boost the coronavirus-hit economy and on a larger than expected buildup in U.S. crude stocks. U.S. WTI crude oil futures were down 0.93% to $40.28 a barrel in early trade, while Brent crude futures were also down 0.73% at $42.34 a barrel. President Trump, who is still being treated for COVID-19, ended talks on Tuesday with Democrats on an economic and aid package, for the United States, which is the world's biggest oil consumer, with the U.S. presidential election only weeks away. President Trump's decision to end fiscal stimulus talks surprised the markets, and prices were also pressured by data from the American Petroleum Institute showing U.S. oil stockpiles rose by 951,000 barrels last week. And back home, lately, the oil and gas industry has seen some developments, most of which are responses to the macroeconomic conditions by the fiscal authorities. While some of these developments don't go down well with stakeholders in the industry, operators and key players have resorted to dialogue while still pushing for solutions to other unions. The Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association, Pengasan, is one of the labor unions concerned about these developments, and the president, Comrade Festus Osifo, joins us now to discuss the position of the body on some of these burning economic issues. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program. Now, since the commencement of full deregulation in the downstream, what has the market experience been like for Pengasan?
Yes, good morning, BC. Good morning, Nigerians. Practically, for Pengasan and for the oil and gas industry, we have never been against deregulation. We have strongly believe that deregulation of the downstream sector of the Nigerian oil and gas industry will open up the industry for more players, will open up the industry for more growth and development. So for us, clearly, we have a firm belief that the full deregulation of the will attract more players. If you could recall that in the last 10 years, for example, the upstream sector of the Nigerian oil and gas industry has experienced some level of growth. But the downstream sector of the Nigerian oil and gas industry, at best, has been flat. And the reason that it has been flat is not far away from the fact that the sector is being hugely regulated. So over the years, we have canvassed that the sector should be deregulated. But there are some condition precedent. There are some things that we've canvassed for that must be done before the deregulation take place. You know, Pengasan, even in 2016, opined that the federal government should through the NNPC, bring about the revitalization of our refineries and should ensure that the NLNG model is being used because we don't want the refinery to be sold. We have said that over and over again because we believe that a true functional refinery is possible. So we're now saying that let's have a public-private partnership using the NLNG model to ensure that our refinery works. But today, is that feasible today, or has it been done today? The answer probably is a no. But one win that we have been able to secure in the recent discussion with government and in NNPC is to ensure that in the rehabilitation of the refinery that is currently, or that is about to kick off, using the Port Harcourt as a test case, they have brought in Pengasan and Nupeng into the steering committee. We were able to push for that. Because over the years, we have said that as Pengasan and Nupeng, at the leadership level, we should be involved. We should know what is happening to these refineries. We should know the processes that are put in place to ensure that our refinery works. But today, the steering committee, we have been integrated. Then the validation committee as well, that will be going from site to site, going to the refineries, and to actually check what is happening in the refinery, who will now be reporting back to the steering committee. We've also, Pengasan and Nupeng will be represented at that level. Then every quarter, we are going to be briefing Nigerians. We will let Nigerians understand and let Nigeria know the state of the refineries, what is being done, and when the refinery will come into, let's say 60, 70 or 80% functional. So for us in Pengassan, we saw that as a departure from the past, where things are being done in a very opaque manner, where we are not carried along on the processes that we've put in place to ensure that our refinery works. So we think that if that is done, if Pengassan and Nupeng play that key role, we will be able to push and we'll tell Nigerians the truth. When things are not working well, we will tell Nigerians that things are not working well. When things are working well, we will tell Nigerians as well. So all the timelines that will be developed, all the timelines that will be put in place and that will be jointly agreed, we will ensure that government and NNPC, they follow those timelines and in ensuring the revitalization of the refineries. So currently, a lot of traction has been made in the Port Harcourt refinery, and efforts have been put in place as well for the Kaduna and Warri refinery. But as Pengassan, we must hold them accountable. Then once these refineries are fixed, then the next thing, which we also agreed, was that Pengassan and Nupeng will be consulted on the operational model of these refineries. So we will come out at every point in time to let Nigeria know where we currently are. So for us, we are not against the regulation, but what we've been against over the years is import-driven deregulation, because we believe that our refineries not working today is purely act of sabotage. Port Harcourt refinery, for example, was built in 1989, thereabout, just about 30 years plus. And there are some refineries all over the world. The second part of the Port Harcourt refinery, there are two. The 150,000 barrels of Port Harcourt refinery was built in 1989. So there are refineries all over the world that are 100 years old, but they are still functional because there is a steady turnaround maintenance in these refineries. So the current rehabilitation going on in Port Harcourt refinery, we will also encourage the NNPC management to fast track in replicating in Kaduna, in Warri refineries as well.
All right. Now, having said that, President Muhammadu Buhari recently submitted the Petroleum Industry Bill to the National Assembly for approval. Now, to what extent is Pengassan positive about this bill?
Yes, you know that the Nigerian Petroleum Sector Reform Bill, which we could call PIB, is aimed at harmonizing all legal instruments covering the oil and gas industry. It's also to strengthen some of the key institutions and enshrine international best practices. The PIB actually is aimed at repealing some of the old outdated laws that we've been using, the old legal regimes that we've been using in the oil and gas industry, like the Petroleum Profit Act of 1959, like the Mineral Oil Act of 1963, the Petroleum Act of 1969, and the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation Decree of 1997. So if you could remember vividly that the journey started quite a long time ago. The journey started during the era of our former President Olusegun Obasanjo administration, when he set up the Oil and Gas Reform Committee under the headship of Riwani Lukman. So from the OGROC, they came up with a national oil and gas policy. So that national oil and gas policy was later adopted, and in 2005, an implementation committee was set up, popularly referred to as the OGIC. But ever since then, the Obasanjo administration left, the Yar'Adua administration came, and they brought about the PIB, that the first copy was submitted in 2008. But again, a lot of contestation in that version that was submitted in 2008. Then after then, we now also moved on to 2016 or thereabout. Again, in 2012, another one was submitted, but it was jettisoned. Then in 2016, that was when we made a little traction. And in that traction, the then Senate, the 8th Senate, broke down the PIB into about 4 trenches. And the first one was talking about the governance bill that now later ended up as the PIGB. Then we now also have, we're supposed to also have the host community bill. We were supposed to have as well the fiscal regime bill and the administration bill. But when the PIGB was passed in 2018, the president refused to assent to it. But today, we are quite excited, we are quite happy because of the fact that a new PIB has been submitted to the National Assembly, and it is an executive bill. So it shows that the executive at this time, they are a bit interested. I could tell you, BC, that we've had Nigeria as a country, we have lost much because of the fact that the PIB was not passed. We have lost a lot because if we do an analysis, some analysis has been done by some experts in the industry, and they put it that we've lost over $70 billion because our PIB was not passed. Because a lot of the IOC companies, because of the uncertainties in the industry, they refuse to do massive investment. For example, our exploration in Nigeria, our reserve in the last 5 years, 6-7 years, had been within about 38 billion barrels. And it's been there for that long while. We had a plan as a country to move it to about 40 billion, but we've not been able to do that. And PIB is also responsible for that. So today we are quite excited, but at the implementation, rather at the phase where they were putting this bill together, Pengassan and Nupen, we weren't consulted. But as it is now, we are we are currently reviewing the bill, and we are putting everything together to make our position known, because we want no single worker in the oil and gas industry should lose his job because of the fact that we are pushing PIB. So we are going to stand firm to that. So our reviews are on the way. We are currently looking at the bills to ensure that at the end of the day, the workers in the Nigerian oil and gas industry is protected. And at the end of the day, we will ensure that the final bill that is passed is a worker-friendly bill.
Now, talking about you having your input in the bill, now, of course, just as you mentioned, there have been several concerns about the PIB in the past, that's for the past 20 years, that is. What is the position of Pengassan on the bill, especially talking about the provisions for taxes to be paid for the IOCs?
Yes, for us, we believe that PIB is going to replicate some of the international best practices. Nigeria, we are not operating in isolation. So we are not operating in on a system whereby we are operating alone. We are operating in an international environment. We are operating in a place where we could copy what is happening in America, what is happening in Venezuela, what is happening in other parts of the world. So those things will be brought into bed at the public hearing phase. So I believe as well that everything should be balanced. Yes, the government needs more money to meet its obligation. That's fair enough. As well, it must create a regime to ensure that the oil and gas industry develops. So it must be a win-win situation. Like what we've seen in the bill, the bill today is divided into about 5 chapters. We have the governance and institution, we have the administration, we have the host community, we have the petroleum industry fiscal framework, and the miscellaneous provision. So under the petroleum industry fiscal framework, in the 239 pages bill, we could also see that the provisions of hydrocarbon tax and revenue and profit tax, they are all spelled out there. But I believe the IOCs as well, they will also make their representation during the public hearing phase.
Now, let's talk about another issue now, and that's the fact that you had 5 agencies of the Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources that you had asked to be exempted from the integrated payroll and personnel information. Has Pengassan's view about this initiative changed?
No, clearly it hasn't changed because what we did was that we nominated our members to be in the committee of the IPPIS to discuss with them and look at our peculiarities in the industry. Worldwide, this industry has some specific allowances that are not captured in the ministries. So we've asked them to sit down to look at these. But the IPPIS office, they have been refusing us to have such meeting, have a technical committee. It was until we wrote several letters before the committee was even constituted. And they had one meeting and they never met again. What was the purpose of that meeting? Come and display to us. Come and show to us that this IPPIS will not shortchange our members. But at the end of the day, they are refusing to do it. Instead, they are going through the back door to start enrolling our members, like our members in NNROA, for example. And the first time they paid them, there was a shortfall in their remuneration. And remember that in the oil and gas industry, we have what we call the collective bargaining agreement. So in NNROA, there's a collective bargaining agreement that was signed in 2015. But what is being implemented is something that is a bit different from that. So clearly, our position on IPPIS still remains, and we urge government to take deliberate steps to address those issues bordering on the remuneration of our workers in government agencies.
But now that the PIB has offered to scrap the PPPRA, which was one of the agencies of government that you had protected against the IPPIS, what would be Pengason's views?
Yes, our views are very direct. All our members in PPPRA, their jobs must be protected. Our members in Petroleum Equalization Fund, their jobs must be protected. That is why, as it is today, Pengasan, we are currently looking at the bill, we are studying the bill, and we are putting our processes together to ensure that the upstream commission that will be formed, the mid and the downstream authority that will also come into bear, we absorb all our members. So at the end of the day, all our members, they will be absorbed. All our members in government agencies, I can assure you that Pengasan and Nupeng, we will stand with them to ensure that they are all absorbed into the commission and the authorities that will be formed. So because they may be self-sustaining at the end of the day, then the issue of IPPIS may die naturally. But we still have Petroleum Training Institute. Petroleum Training Institute is another agency under us. NNRO is another agency under us that they will still push on the issue of the IPPIS. So the IPPIS issue will still remain live, even post-PIB.
Now, I know you're very passionate about the interest of your members. I was talking about protecting the interest of your members. And some of your members recently protested against Chevron Nigeria's planned sack of 25% or about 600 of its workforce. What's the justification for that protest, especially considering the fact that the oil major has explained that the move will help it strengthen its business and stay competitive, especially in these tough times?
Yeah, BC, thank you very much. You know, in the labor world, there are processes. In the labor world, there are laws. So before you go about redundancy, you ought to follow the processes and you ought to respect the laws. So currently today, you know, Chevron in the HQ announced that they want to reduce between 10 to 15% of the staff worldwide. But in doing that, you ought to sit down with your local union. You sit down with them. You have the engagement. I am from an IOC. I cannot remember any time where such program is about to be implemented and you just inform the union. What Chevron management did was just information. But such program, in most cases, are discussed over 3 to 6 months. You discuss them, you have a robust engagement, and you both agree on the way forward. So you have a CBA. Chevron management never respected that CBA. Chevron management never carried NAPIMS along. NAPIMS is the agency that is responsible for managing the federal government investment in the IOCs. But Chevron management never carried them along. DPRO, Chevron management never carried them along. And remember as well, BC, that the federal government of Nigeria has a mantra of creating jobs. And today, instead of Chevron management to be assisting in that mantra, they are going the other way. I urge the Nigerian government to stand up, just as the government of Venezuela did, just as the government of Kazakhstan did, that they told the Chevron management, no, you cannot unilaterally sack our workers, because after all, the oil belongs to us. So we believe that Chevron management, they have a lot of things that they are hiding. That is why they are refusing to discuss. We are open to discussion. We are open to negotiation. Whenever they are ready, we will have that discussion with them. But this should be objective.
We'll all be waiting for the outcome of that meeting if it happens. We'd like to thank you, Pengasan President, Comrade Festus Osi, for joining us on the program this morning.
Thank you very much, BC.
Well, we're still talking about the petroleum downstream when we return in just a moment, but this time we'll be getting an analyst perspective. Do join us again. Now, let's continue the conversation in the oil and gas industry. It's staying with the petroleum subsector, which remains a key area of interest. And this is not surprising as a result of ongoing policy changes in the sector, inclusive of government's full weight behind the regulation and the final removal of subsidies on petrol. And then news just in says that the deliberations on the petroleum industry bill by the National Assembly has been shifted to the first quarter of next year. And that's coming from the Minister of State from the Petroleum Resources, Mr. Timipre Silva, and that's the feelers that we're getting this morning. But then let's get a reaction of the Chief Executive Officer of the Center for Financial Journalism, Ray Echebiri, to analyze this development in addition to other issues in the petroleum sector. Good morning, Mr. Echebiri. Thanks for joining us on the program. Well, let's begin this conversation with the feelers that we're just getting now, that deliberations for the PIB deliberation has been shifted to 2021. Did you see this coming again?
Of course, I saw it coming. As a matter of fact, it's one issue I don't like to discuss anymore. The PIB has become some kind of rolling stone, and it's said that rolling stone doesn't gather anymore. It can't gather anymore. A bill that is as old as man, and we're still discussing it. What for? I don't understand what the National Assembly wants to do with PIB. Is either want to be serious or we don't want to be serious. I mean, this bill has been there for years. And just recently, everybody was excited. Oh, once again, the National Assembly is ready to discuss it and possibly pass it as quickly as possible and then send it to the president for his signature. But now we are hearing that the discussion has been moved to next quarter, first quarter of next year. That may not be the last shift. So it keeps shifting. It keeps shifting. And it's bad for us. It's bad for the petroleum industry. It's bad for our economy. It's bad for Nigeria. That is the truth.
I was just going to ask that. What would be the implications of this?
Yeah, the implication is the wait-and-see game continues for all investors who are interested in investing in the oil industry in Nigeria, the oil and gas industry in Nigeria. Because that is the bill, or when it becomes law, that will give us all the compass that we need, especially for investors in the oil and gas industry to move in the right directions. But now it's not there, and nobody knows when it will be there. So everybody that is operating there now is just like blind piloting.
But the lawmakers probably want to make sure that we get it right when it's eventually passed.
No, how long will it take forever to get a bill right, to get something right? No, it shouldn't. If it is getting forever to get it right, then there's a problem. There's a problem. To my view, it's sad. In fact, I was excited that it's going to be discussed by the National Assembly eventually, and possibly quickly passed and then sent to the president. But now, we are hearing that it's been shifted to first quarter 2021.
Right, so we just have to wait and see what comes out of it.
Let's keep waiting.
Yes, indeed. So you heard the position of Pengasan earlier about the development in the petroleum sector. What are your thoughts about the full deregulation of this sector?
I think it's one of the best policies that's coming out of this country about this time. I have been saying that it should happen. Full deregulation, not this one of 20% deregulation, 30% deregulation. In fact, at the time, I said, if we are doing piecemeal deregulation, 10%, 20%, 30%, there will be no end to it. There can never be an end to it. Why? For two reasons. This is an internationally traded commodity. So the price is not within the control of Nigeria or Nigerians, no. So the price keeps moving up and down in the international market. So you just have to plug in. It's something beyond your control. So the second one is because of exchange rate changes, that is movement in the exchange rate. You cannot say, oh, you are 20% or you are 30%. When you think you have moved to 50%, maybe the exchange rate will move or the price will move. You go back to 30, depending on the way it is. You go back to 30 or you go to 60 or 70, depending on how the price is moving, whether it's going up or down, depending on how the exchange rate is moving, whether it's going up or down. So the best thing is to say, please, let's clear this, full deregulation, and then see how that's going, things going to work out for us, and begin to put the necessary framework in place to make sure it works for us.
Now, one of the things that the Pengasyn president mentioned was the fact that they want the Pengasyn to, of course, actually make their input in the PIB before the National Assembly. What would you say to that?
What were they waiting for this while? The PIB has been there for how many years? So why didn't they make their inputs all this while? So let them keep making, let them keep preparing their inputs until their kingdom come. Then we'll begin to look at PIB once again. So let them keep.
But then they had mentioned that they were not carried along in all of this in the past.
Why were they not carried along? Sometimes you do not wait to be carried along when it comes to matters like this. No, Pengasyn and Nupeng, if it comes to maybe say any of the refineries or any of the oil companies doing anything to their staff and all that, would they say, oh, let's just wait until we are carried along before we intervene and all that? They move in immediately and say, no, you can't do this. PIB has been there. Those people should have moved in immediately. Say, even you don't just wait. If you like, make your own proposal. Send your own position to the National Assembly and insist that the government incorporates that. And you keep pushing. If it is any other thing, they would have kept pushing. And the government would have listened to them. That is the truth.
Now, in what areas would you suggest that the federal government should come up with a free market structure as the government ramps up efforts for revenue generation?
This is part of it. The full deregulation of the downstream sector of the petroleum and gas industry. This is part of it. If you look at this year's budget and look at what is trickling in as revenue, you know that it's going to be really tough. So federal government needs all the revenue it can generate, it can get from any source to really fund the budget properly. Now, all this while, we've been losing money as a result of the subsidy on fuel. If that is removed, a whole lot of money will be saved from that to fund both soft and physical infrastructure. Now, let me put it this way. If you give me subsidy on fuel that I'll put in my car, and they say, now, would you also consider driving on a well-paved road? I will take a well-paved road. Take your subsidy. It's better for me. One, it will definitely cost me less at the end of the day. Driving time, I will save that. The wear and tear on my car, I will save that. And then the luxury of driving on a well-paved road. I mean, you can, if you are being driven, if you are driven, you can even slip off. And they feel good. And what of your health? So, it's a better deal any day.
All right, I'd like to thank you, Chief Executive Officer of the Center for Financial Journalism, Mr. Ray Chebere. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's switch gear now, switching our conversation to the Nigerian equities markets, which recorded its largest daily gain in more than 5 years yesterday, surging by 4.9% and taking the equity capitalization beyond the 15 trillion naira mark. Now, this also follows a 12-day rally that has also shifted the year-to-date returns from a negative position to the positive territory of 7.7%. Well, let's now talk to the head of portfolio asset management at Commercial Partners, Victor Aliyu, to get his reaction to all of this. Good morning, Victor. Thank you for joining us. Now, beyond the reduction of NPR by 100 basis points and the weaker average yield across the debt markets, what other factors have been driving interest in equities?
I think it's largely on the back of that, really, and I think the signal was strong from the committee. That's the Monetary Policy Committee, to basically, essentially posturing to the market that these low rates or these low yields are here to stay for a bit. So clearly, fund managers, portfolio managers, pension fund managers are, essentially looking to pick up better yield elsewhere. So clearly, if you look at, the dividend yield on some select names, you would see that you're getting a significantly better yield than what you're seeing even at the long end of the fixed income market at this time. So clearly, that has created a shift in sentiment towards equities, and that's the reason we've seen the kind of run up that we have seen over the last 2 weeks. Market has added over 16% in about 2 weeks, and like you mentioned, market capitalization is over 15 trillion as we speak. Averagely, for a lot of the bellwether names, we have seen them notch up over 20% within this time period. I think the play here clearly is a strong dividend play, and it's essentially hinged on the fact that those yields from a dividend perspective are way more attractive than what you're getting within that fixed income market at this time.
Now, between the domestic and the foreign players, who are those who are taking advantage of the low valuations in the market now, considering that the stock exchange reported an increase in PFIs in August?
Well, so clearly you're seeing the locals still hold sway. As a matter of fact, what is happening with the foreign investors right now is that they are essentially just enjoying this rally as a way to move up their own books. Their own stance has been to find a way to get out of the market. Because again, if you look at it from a fundamental perspective, the macroeconomy still is significantly challenged. If you look at it from a regulatory standpoint, a lot of the sectors are still, quite challenged. So, the valuations, particularly from a dividend yield perspective, is what is driving this. And, a lot of the local investors are heavily in on this. And again, one of the strongest, drivers of this is the signal that, these low interest rates or these low yields are likely to remain for, a little while longer.
Well, the interest has been more on the bellwethers such as MTN, Airtel, Dangote Cement, and the Tier 1 banks. So how well do you see investors' sentiments rubbing off on other companies?
Well, I think that there is a likelihood that that happens. Again, when you have a rising tide, it tends to lift all boats, and that's what you're seeing right now. But again, I think that investors are likely to put on their cautious hats. Again, I think that once the valuations in terms of a dividend yield perspective start to look stretched, so as these prices rise and then the dividend yields are starting to look deep into single digits or not look so appealing anymore, that could put some sort of brakes on the sort of move that we have seen so far. Nevertheless, you're likely to see that spill to some of the less preferred or less favored names.
Well, Victor, with this traction in the equities markets, of course, we can't rule out the participation of offshore investors. But how does that speak to the impacts we've seen on currency pressures?
Well, so the currency situation remains a sticking point, if you will, particularly for foreign investors. With the kind of movement that we have seen today, if you compare that to the sort of, if you will, depreciation that they have witnessed on the currency side, they are probably still out of the money. So it's a big issue for them. It's one that is significantly concerning for them. And once we see moves, particularly from a policy standpoint, that seek to holistically address, that issue, it would certainly serve to attract even more foreign participation. Recall that, the birthing of the R&E window in 2017, essentially heralded, a strong run that saw the market put up about a 42% return that year. So I think, reform and policy moves on that front will be critical to determining the sort of participation that the foreign investors have going forward.
But Victor, we all know that the exchange has other products such as ETFs and bonds. So how considerable are these instruments to investors?
Well, I mean, these are initiatives that the exchange has taken to even further deepen, its product offering. But suffice it to say that the level of trading, in terms of volume and activity generally, is certainly nowhere compared to what you have, for equities. For the fixed income market, still a lot of trades are still done using the CBN platform, to settle those trades. So clearly, I think that, going forward, traction for fixed income trades and also derivatives and ETFs through the Nigerian Stock Exchange will continue to grow. But for now, it's really on the little side, really.
Now, let's look at some of the regulatory policies. The exchange recently reduced charges of 5 naira per million on its fixed income securities after the expiration of a 4-year moratorium period. What do you make of that development?
Well, I think it's a case where the exchange is certainly seeing some more traction, particularly with that fixed income trading line, if you will. And, so I think that's what the exchange is seeing. And the idea, again, is to try and further drive that. One would expect that even with the traction, sort of fees will sort of be kept at bay to encourage even further participation. But again, I'm quite sure that the exchange is looking to also take advantage of that increase. So again, like I mentioned, if you compare the percentage of activity in terms of the fixed income and also the equities, it's really a far cry still. But I think that fixed income level will continue to grow.
And in preparation for the introduction of derivatives, we see that the SEC has recently approved the licensing of central counterparties in the capital market, the FMDQ Clear and NG Clear. What, in your view, does that mean for the financial market?
I think it just further deepens the financial market. When you're looking to deepen the market, it is important that the necessary infrastructure is in place, not just for trades to happen, but for them to be able to settle amicably and smoothly, because settlement is just as important as, the trading leg of things. So I think this is a step in the right direction. It will certainly serve to further deepen, the capital market with these new product offerings. And it also offers a platform upon which, further product innovation can sit in terms of settlement, in terms of, movement across the platform. So I think it's a welcomed development.
Well, thank you, Head of Portfolio Asset Management at Commercial Partners, Victor Aluyi. Thanks for sharing some of your time with us this morning.
Thank you.
Well, let's now cross to our London studio to get this morning's business analysis from my colleague there, Juliana Olayinka. Good morning, Juliana. Well, let's begin with an analysis done by the National Audit Office, which shows criminals could have stolen more than £1.9 billion from taxpayers through the government loan scheme for struggling small businesses. And the NO also says that the UK's 5 biggest banks will pocket nearly £1 billion between them from the scheme. How did all of these happen?
Oh, well, it was always a fear, and this is something that's been discussed by opposition leaders, as well as the Bank of England, that perhaps this bounce-back loan would be taken advantage of by criminal gangs, and that's what the National Audit Office have suggested today. The National Audit Office is the government's own regulatory body, and they have said that of the £48 billion that will be paid out by the banks, that will be paid back by the taxpayer. Over half of it, about £26 billion, will either be defaulted or would have been used by criminal gangs. So far, about £36 billion has been given out by the Chancellor by over 1 million different firms. And really, the bounce back loan scheme was supposed to be quick. It was supposed to be easy because the government's initial scheme, the coronavirus emergency loan scheme, was full of so much bureaucracy and red tape that small to medium-sized enterprises just said that it was impossible for banks to lend to them under the terms and conditions. Apparently, some of the applications were 50 pages long. So the Chancellor came up with this new scheme in May, supposed to be quick and fast. I believe people were applying on Monday, and by Wednesday, yesterday you could have £50,000 in your bank account with less checks than was typical. And of course, this is a pandemic. So there were suggestions that this was always going to be the case. But now the National Audit Office have laid bare just how dark the situation is, and the fact that £26 billion of this money will never be paid back.
And that's a whole lot, Juliana. Well, moving on, a report by Swiss bank UBS found that billionaires increased their wealth by more than 27.5% at the height of the crisis from April to July. And that's just as millions of people around the world lost their jobs or were struggling to get by on government schemes. What did they do differently?
What do they do differently? Unfortunately, Bissy, I don't know the secrets of billionaires. If I did, I'd probably be one myself. But, you know, the old adage of money makes money is true, and more money makes more money. I think most of our viewers know that already. The rich do get richer, don't they? And the pandemic has just laid that clear. The Swiss bank UBS reports has said that the combined wealth of the world's billionaires is higher than ever. They're now all worth about $10 trillion. Some facts for you. Last year there were 2,058 billionaires. This year there are 2,189 billionaires. It's really, this statement is really just flaunting of wealth, really. And the UBS Swiss report also suggests, which we already know, that tech firms, health firms have all done very well. Amazon, of course, has done very well under Jeff Bezos, and because most people have been working at home at one point during this pandemic, tech giants seem to be the cream of the crop, including Zoom, which a lot of people have been using for their remote meetings.
Well, that's quite interesting, Juliana. Now, let's talk about this new report put together by the Social Market Foundation, saying that governments may likely miss the 2025 target for fiber broadband in every home. Why is this happening?
Well, it's quite interesting, actually. In the UK, most people obviously have access to the internet. But if you compare the fast fibre connection that's seen across the world, only 14% of UK households have that kind of connection. And it's compared to about 80% in most developed countries. So the UK is obviously lagging behind. Then there's that spat with Huawei, the Chinese giant tech firm, which means we're even going to be more delayed. This think tank, the Social Market Foundation Fund, thinks that 2025 for this kind of scale-up initiative, which Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, went around the country promising during his election campaign last year. They said it's just too ambitious, it's unlikely to happen. And the pandemic has drawn up so many issues that we have with old buildings and connectivity issues. So they're asking the government to put money into specific areas, including public sector buildings, hospitals and schools. They're going to need more work. And the report also raises questions about BT's monopoly on connectivity here in the UK. BT use OpenReach, and the OpenReach has access to basically all of the internet connection around the UK, and there are concerns that they're using this power to overcharge how much they are renting to wholesale. So it raises a lot of issues. But yes, the bottom line is they're saying 2025 is completely unrealistic for Boris Johnson's government.
Thank you, Juliana. We'll see you again in the afternoon.
Thank you.
Well, it's time now to get a review of Tuesday's activities at the local equities market with Eddie Young in one. Good morning, Eddie. So the market took a very big jump yesterday. Tell us more about this.
Good morning, BC. Well, just like we mentioned yesterday, it seems like the market is on steroids. On Monday, the all-share index hit a new high, and we haven't seen that since May the 5th. And then yesterday, the market hit another new high, and research firms say that that was the largest single gain in the benchmark index since April the 1st, 2015. The all-share index was up by almost 5% yesterday. with the month-to-date and year-to-date gains at about 7.7%. The all-share index also jumped. As on Monday, we jumped to the 27,000 level, and then yesterday we jumped to the 28,000 level. The equity cap increased by about 700 billion naira to 15.110 trillion naira. Activity level was amazing yesterday. Volume was up by about 24% at 749.46 million units. Value was up about 27% to 9.49 billion naira. And all of that was traded in over 8,000 deals. Look at the sectoral chart. All the sectors are green. The banking was up by 7.48%. Of course, that was due to gains from FBNH, Zenith Bank, UBA, Access Bank. They were all up by more than 9% yesterday, while Jaiz Bank was the only loser on that counter. Consumer goods was up 2.95%. And that was due to the gains from international breweries, Nigerian breweries, and Guinness. Industrial goods was up 5.64%. Of course, that was due to gains from Dangote Cement. Insurance was up, while oil and gas was up by 1.15%. Now, looking at the oil and gas counter, we see that all these stocks, posted gains yesterday. Ardova was up 8.97%. Oando was up 9.57%. Eternal Oil was up 9.49%, while Japol was up by about 5%. And looking at the unlisted securities market, that market was unchanged yesterday. There was no movement in the index or the equity cap. We had the NSI at 796.93 points, while the market cap was at 533.98 billion naira. But before we go on with that, let's talk to Jamil Mohammed, the head securities dealing at APT Securities and Funds. Good morning, Mr. Mohammed. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be with you.
So we've seen huge gains in the market lately. How long do you think this will last, or should we be expecting profit taking soon?
Yes, we should expect profit taking for now because we can't continue in this manner. And you can see the market how it has traded yesterday. You see the level of upward trend is not sustainable. So I urge our investors to be cautious in their trading and always look for stocks that have fundamentals.
All right, Mr. Mohammed, thank you for your input on the program. Jamil Mohammed is the head securities dealing at APT Securities and Funds. We'll have to leave it there on the market review and hope that these gains continue in the market. Over to you, BC.
Thank you, Adijong. Or we'll wait and see if profit taking will return, just as Jamil Mohammed had said. Well, that's where we leave today's program. Thank you for watching. I am BC Adebayo.